Welcome to the Experimental Honesty podcast. I'm Brian Curtis. Today I'm speaking with Dr. Brandon Yabko. Brandon's a licensed counseling psychologist. He's founder of the group psychology practice SLC Psych, and he specializes in helping people more effectively manage burnout and stress, trauma and PTSD, chronic pain, and mood and anxiety disorders. Brandon's an incredible psychologist and one of the kindest, warmest, and most compassionate people that I've ever had the good fortune of meeting. It was really great to catch back up with him and to have him guide us through a self-compassion practice during our conversation. You can learn more about Brandon and his work by visiting his group practice website at slc-psych.com. Okay, let's talk to Brandon. So I'm here with Dr. Brandon Yabko. So Brandon, thanks so much for taking the time to chat today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
I realized I said doctor. We could probably have a conversation about that. Here, let me actually start over. Are you fine with me saying that? Or you are, and I introduce people like that, and then I just call you by your first name. Is that okay?
That's totally fine. I prefer Brandon, but I think that's just my style. So I think it's fine if you want to use that or even use what we're talking about, because I think it's a good discussion on what do you call a psychologist and how do you refer to people and what does a psychologist want, right?
Yeah.
I remember when I first got, I was in postdoc, got my license, and I was like, yes, I'm Dr. Brandon Yabko. And then since then, it's been like, no, just Brandon, because I think that's really how I see therapy working, is not this like structured, like I, thou, it's like you and me, and we're on this journey together. And so I think just calling doctor puts me at this, gives me the power that that I don't really want in the therapeutic relationship. I don't want that power. I don't want somebody to feel like I have power over them.
Yeah. That's where I started too, and it's been this shifting thing for me as well. And it's something that I've gone back and forth on, because it is with PhD, so doctor, that's where it comes from. But however, especially in working in sleep medicine, like I do, they're like, oh, you can prescribe sleep meds. I'm like, I'm not that kind of a doctor. I'm a PhD, a clinical psychologist. And it does create that imbalance, like just by that title. And so I go by Brian. Sometimes I'll say, Dr. Brian Curtis, please call me Brian, right? That's what I prefer, yes, just like you did. And so it's a conversation that when I've had with other therapists, I've gotten different reactions. And so I've always been interested in hearing, your thoughts on that, as well as client and patient. That's another one, right?
Yeah. When I was working at the VA, people wanted to call me doc. And so it just was a thing that they wanted, even though I was like, call me Brandon. They're like, no, it's a respect thing. And
yep,
that's a different culture. And so in some cultures, they want to do that. And that's totally fine with me. I always want them to invite them to just see me as Brandon, because, the work we do is about being human. And so, as human as I can be with others is kind of my goal.
Nice. Well, I'm going to give you a brief background, kind of an intro. Let's see how I do. So you're a licensed counseling psychologist. You're founder of the group psychology practice, SLC Psych, website, slc-psych.com. And that's focused on providing care to, hospital workers. There's educators, whether they're experiencing, chronic stress, burnout, and also the general population, right? Experiencing difficulties with mental health, anxiety, trauma, those, other issues as well. And you have advanced training, specialization, and, treatments like acceptance and commitment therapy, eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing, mindfulness-based stress reduction, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, mindful self-compassion. And you played an incredibly important role in my training, right? As, in mindfulness interventions. You previously created one of the first mindfulness centers within the VA. And so I'll kind of pause there. Is that an okay summary of your background? We'll get into your story here in a second.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it just is, prior to this, reflecting on the day I met you during internship interviews, and I was like, yes, I like this guy. We just like hit it off. It was like a bond at first sight kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
Yeah, it's kind of wild thinking back then and right now. But yeah, instantly I was like, I like that Brandon guy. I hope I can get to work with him. And I got very fortunate too. And really, though, you played an incredibly important role for me, and it was incredibly meaningful. So yeah, it's great to have you here. With kind of that background, maybe let's just start with kind of your story, right? How you ended up, getting into this area with, mental health therapy, why this stuff's important to you. What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so I think unlike some people, I had no idea that I would be where I am. Like as a psychologist, um, I grew up playing football from the age of 7 to 18. I was into smashing heads and you know partying and just having fun during high school. Um, I grew up in a kind of at the time a small town, Santa Clarita, California, and by Magic Mountain, and I was one of the only Jewish people there,
Mm,
and I would have people staring at me. I remember in like fourth grade, somebody just staring at me as I'm playing in the sandbox, and I like look up, and I'm like, "What's up?" They're like, "Oh, I've never seen a Jew before." I was like, "Oh." Um, and my whole town was all Christmas, all that. So I remember just
mm,
feeling, kind of outcasted. I was bullied a lot throughout until I got to high school, and very not psychologically minded at all. Would like I said, into smashing heads and drinking. It was like that was kind of partying, and that was kind of my thing. And went to San Diego State because it was a party school. So I mean, everything was kind of like party. And then
yeah.
um, uh, I got to college, and a few things happened. One, I was like, I'm going to be an FBI criminal profiler. Like, that's what I want to do. Because again, it's like, this felt pretty like macho or something, like as
Hmm.
if I couldn't have feminine qualities or want to have a soft side. I don't think I was in touch with that at all.
Hmm.
Um, and I was in classes for it, and I was falling asleep in those classes. They were boring. I hated them. It was all about law, and that's just not my thing.
Mm.
And so went running one day on the beach with one of my best friends, and sorry, my dog's
That's
barking
totally
in the
fine. My
background.
dog, if our dog barks outside, we're on the same team, so totally fine.
Um, so yeah, running on the beach one day, and was like talking about stuff. And he's kind of one of these people who's like, you should do this, you should do that. And he's like, you should check out psychology. And I was like, wait, because I've always been interested in psychology, like just as a like, this is interesting,
Yeah.
but I knew nothing about it. And I took one class, and we learned about neurons. And I left the class, called my dad, and I could not stop talking about it for probably 2 hours straight. Neurons, how they wire together, they fire together, how we can change them. Like I always thought we were just who we are, and there's no changing it. And
Hmm.
that was it. Um, and um, and so kind of that class sparked this like really just kind of like, yeah, this is for me. And my dad even reflected, like, this sounds like you like it.
Yeah.
And so I just started taking classes. I got into a research group just because somebody's like, if you want to get into, master's program or doctoral program, you need to do research. So I got into research on bullying, not connecting the fact that I had, been bullied when I was little. And so it was something I was passionate about, and started writing up papers, and just loved the field of psychology. It was fascinating. I always say we either get into this field to fix ourselves or fix our family. For me, it was both. I mean, growing up being bullied, believing I'm not good enough, really believing a lot of these things that um, these kind of beliefs. I was like, all right, well, if I do psychology, maybe I can help myself.
Mm.
Um, so, so college fun, did that, got into Arizona State, and when I was there, at the doctoral program, I wasn't sure if I wanted to do research or clinical work. And as soon as I saw my first client, I was like, I'm in love with this. This is like just amazing. Um, and um, and so during that time, I committed everything towards that. Like it was all like books and trying to learn. And if I didn't know, I'd learn more. And so part of the reason I've gotten trained in so many things is that belief, well, I'm not good enough. And so
Mm.
that was kind of a theme um, throughout that time. Was like, all right, well, if I get a PhD, then like I'm going to prove to myself I am, but also like just this is going to happen. Like I'm going to fix this belief and I'm going to fix my family. Right. I
Mm-hmm.
figured out I couldn't fix my family much sooner than that. But um, in in grad school, I was doing a lot of stuff like guided imagery. I was learning hypnosis. I was really trying to help people get outside their body because that's what I felt like I needed to. Like being inside felt scary. Thoughts were like, how do I deal with these? And I'm in grad school going, how do I deal with this? I'm not learning any skills that I'm feeling are helpful. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was trying cognitive therapy, right? Let me shift that belief. I was trying, hypnotic suggestions, all sorts of stuff. And somebody had told me about this thing called mindfulness, and they had just taken a DBT class also in grad school, and so they came to me and go, Brandon, you should look into this. Like, I think this could help with stress and just help you and the work you're doing. I said, what is it? And they were like, you focus on your breath. I said, okay, and then what? You focus on your breath. And I was like, that's ridiculous. And so I just laughed and probably laughed at that person's face. Wasn't very nice about it. I said, no, we need to get outside of our bodies. So I then went to Arizona Psychological Association conference, and this guy by the name of Ronald Siegel, he's written a few books. He was the lecturer there, and he says to me, and he kind of takes his hands, he put one hand like, he says to the crowd, not to me.
Right.
It was kind of felt like it was to me in a sense because it was speaking to me. But he takes one of his hands and puts it like, going forward towards the kind of in front of his like face, and then he says, oftentimes our mind is in the future, and this creates anxiety. Or, and he takes his hand, puts the other hand in behind him, and goes, or it's in the past, and this creates depression. And mindfulness is a retraining of the mind to come back to the present moment. And we do that over and over so that we can be present. Still not anything. Then he says, let's just try it. I tried it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have never felt so like still. Like we did a 30-minute meditation for my first one. So it wasn't like I was just like hop right into it. Right.
Yeah.
And I just felt, mindfulness is not about relaxation, but it felt so relaxing. It felt so chill. And so if that didn't kind of set the tone, the next Monday I was working at a Job Corps. So helping kind of, disadvantaged youth. Mm-hmm. And somebody was coming in who had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and there was a crisis. He was wanting to end his life. And I was the only one there. And I'm kind of like green. And I'm like, this is only my third year of like working with people. And I've never worked with somebody with schizophrenia. Mm-hmm. So I just said, hey, I learned this new thing. Let's try it. So it was not a lot of explanation. We just did it. And he starts laughing after it. I was like, what's going on? And he's like, well, that's what I've wanted out of therapy. I've never had my mind be still before. I've never actually been able to see those thoughts for what they are. And like that just kind of clinically hooked me as well. Mm-hmm. And then this is the other kicker is I've made my life like dreams out of mindfulness and compassion. And the person I laughed at their face is it's my partner, my wife, and was the the first lesson in that she's always right. So
right.
I learned that early on.
You hit on so many important things there. And so in that journey, it seems like neurons were the first thing that hooked you, right? More of the biology, we can change ourselves, and then this gradual progression of, I guess what's been useful for you and not, right? Cognitive therapy, we can do this, it kind of bounces off. And then something about mindfulness in your experience. It's interesting hearing it's like that was my experience too. If you had said the word meditation, I would have probably laughed. I don't know about in your face, but at least
Mhm.
internally. But when getting
Yeah.
trained in DBT, that was the first thing for me. I'm like, all right, well, this is a foundational part. I'll just try it. And that it changed my life. I was like, oh, thoughts are separate than what I am, right? That was such a game changer for me. And now I don't know, 7.5, however much later, it's not even a daily practice. It's happening right now, right? In this conversation. Such something that was so surprising for me. And I'm curious, you've hit on a number of things that sounded like were surprising for you. But as you've gone through this process, and maybe even as you are now doing the VA and now having your own practice where you get to focus on less of the administrative stuff that, we had conversations about that was not what you wanted to do.
Mhm.
Were there things that really jumped out and kind of surprised you that you weren't expecting that as you think about it now, like these were things you didn't expect during this journey? I'm just curious if anything jumps out.
For sure. What we do is not about changing who we are. What we do is about actually accepting ourselves.
Mm,
And I think that was the biggest I mean, I still get like just chills saying it out loud because I was so focused on no, but I need to fix this, right? I need to change this thought that I have, this belief about myself that causes shame. I need to change it. And it wasn't until I could learn I actually don't need to change it. I need to let it be and just kind of like in the background. So like it could probably happen 50 times as we're talking, but it's not smacking me in the face anymore. It's not punching me in the gut because it's something that's been worked with. So it's not about getting rid of it, but more the acceptance of having it. And acceptance is a loaded term. And what I want to just make sure people understand, it's not about acceptance isn't like, okay, just accept it. Like this rolling over, playing dead, whatever that is, like that's resignation. Acceptance is such an active process that happens every second of every moment. Like I can't tell you that I can accept that thought 10 hours from now. I can accept it right now. Right. And like that's doable. And I can have it be in the background. And so it really, I think that's probably the biggest piece was the more that I got into psychology and meditation and then into self-compassion and really, which was the second thing my wife told me about, and she did her dissertation on it, by the way.
oh,
And
that's
I
funny.
just said no, I'm not doing it. Mindfulness is better. There's no
Mhm.
better, right? You have to have both.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I was stuck, right? I was stuck and like, no, I can't do that because, well, the thought of being kind to myself was like just wasn't, I couldn't imagine it. And so whenever I talk about therapy with people, it is a process of self acceptance. Like, um, and it's really, then people say, okay, well, what about this thing I don't like, or this behavior I'm having? What is it about that? Those are all the protections we've put up over time. Um, to really, they're called defense mechanisms for a reason because we're defending ourselves from things that have hurt. And so part of the work that I've been doing with people really has been in recent years shifting more towards let's try to work with those parts that are um, that just take over the system, that take over you
Mm.
in these moments of suffering, and learn what they're trying to do, how they're trying to help, and then um, it's ultimately so that we can accept even these parts, like a part that wants to drink alcohol all the time, a
Mhm.
part that wants to, harm ourselves in some way, a part that wants to shame ourselves or whatever it is. All of those parts, what I've started to learn is they developed for a reason. And so if we can try to accept all of these parts and actually be with them, there's really good reasons why we do what we do. Are they effective? Maybe not. Do they get this towards our values? Do they get us closer to it? No, not all the time. And I think that's kind of the litmus test for, is this a behavior I want to continue? So yeah, I'd say self-acceptance, biggest surprise.
And I like that you brought up that acceptance can be a loaded term because when you hear that, we use it as like, oh, you just need to accept it, like that resignation,
Yeah.
that sense. a pretty pivotal concept for me in DBT was, well, when we have acceptance here, we have change here. Oftentimes acceptance is without acceptance, how can you change something? With acceptance basically being acknowledging the facts of what's happening, right? This is how experience is right now. And without doing that, it's like turning on a light, right? In the basement or in
Yes.
the attic to see what's maybe out of place, not effective. But by having that acceptance, that then allows, if you want to call it change or just forward movement, we're not stuck anymore. We can do something about our situation. But without acknowledging that, avoiding it, suppressing it, we never really get to test out what's on the other side. That to me was a huge kind of connection to make, and the power of acceptance. Because when people hear that, they're like, "Oh, we're not changing anything if we do this." It's like, well, it's we talk about them as different words, but they're kind of this progression. That's how at least I currently think about that. If that's similar to how you think about it.
Definitely. Yeah, totally. And you can see this in kids. So I know you have kids, I have kids.
Hmm.
Like for those of us who watch kids, like there's such a denial of reality that like my little one, he'll be like, so he's almost 4, but
Mm.
uh, he just wants to poop his pants. That's what he wants to do. And
That's
so
what
when
he's
he
into
does it,
these days.
oh yeah, that's what he's into, you know? And so it's almost, you know, we could see it in so many different psychological ways, which is another problem in and of itself. Like people say you're a psychologist, like you must be a great parent. And I'm like, well, I actually think myself to death around parenting because I think I'm gonna, you know,
Yeah.
mess my child up every single second.
Yeah.
But when he does that, he'll say, "No, I didn't poop my pants. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. No, I didn't." And what's happening is actually his butt's burning, right? Like he is like in pain. Like this
Mm.
is painful, and he's denying it because in the moment, that's like denial is the best because he doesn't want to be in trouble. He doesn't want to like look at it. But ultimately, when he's willing to look at it and say, "The poop is here," um, it gets better, right? And that's where the change starts to happen. Um, and so same thing as as adults and
Yeah.
in other circumstances, if we say I'm not anxious, I'm not anxious, I'm not anxious, first of all, you know, there's an act saying like it's like if you don't want it, you got it.
Yep.
So you're like trying to push it away, and the more we're resisting that stuff, like it's not happening, then we can't actually work towards it. We can't work on like what is it like when I'm anxious, and can I shift how I'm my relationship to anxiety? We can't do it, right? Because we're
Yeah.
so focused on let me get rid of it rather than let me actually look into it. And I think that's where mindfulness I found to come in particularly help, like be even more helpful, is because it's like a subtle exposure. So, you know, there's exposure therapies. Like if somebody's scared of a snake, you expose them to like, you know, progressively to snakes, right? Like in a
Hmm.
picture and so forth. Mindfulness is kind of the same way. We start off with kind of finding something of safety, whether it's sound or the breath or whatever it is, and then that can give us this kind of secure attachment to ourself to then explore those things that are difficult. Because we're like, all right, well, I know I can come back to my breath, or I know I can come back to sound, or
Hmm.
to a yoga practice. Um, yeah, so
Yeah.
um,
With
could talk for
with
days about that.
I know. We definitely could. With all of the trainings that you've had, right? You mentioned things like ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. When you're talking about parts, I'm assuming internal family systems, like all the stuff you've done without even needing you to pick like your favorite. But I'm curious in the work you do, right? If there's a concept, a technique, a tool, something that you find has been incredibly powerful for the clients you work with and or what you've seen in your own life. I'm just curious if something kind of sticks out without having to pick a favorite, right? Good, bad, right, wrong. Is there something that comes to mind is like, well, this concept or tool or something has been very, very useful and continues to be.
Yeah, so much to my chagrin, my wife was right about self compassion because
Yeah.
that's actually been probably the most influential piece. Uh, the tool that I would say is there's kind of two of them that go together, which is um, teaching people what, first of all, what is self compassion? Because I think there's a lot of beliefs about what it is.
Mm.
Um, but then it's like the tools that are associated with that are like that I find most helpful are um, compassionate touch. So like we're mammals, and mammals need touch. And there's, the famous experiments with rhesus monkeys where there were, monkeys that had like a plush teddy bear parent and monkeys that had a wire parent. The ones that had a wire parent didn't do very well. Their attachment style was really poor. So usually some sort of anxious or avoidant attachment. Whereas the other ones had more secure attachment and did much better, more pro-social behaviors, all of that. So we as mammals, all of us that are mammals, we need touch. Like it is something that shifts us from kind of our fight, flight, freeze response into a more compassionate kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not relaxation response, but more of a kind of presence, a groundingness, a shift into kind of a being mode. And so a lot of times when I'm working with people, especially early on before they know this stuff, I teach these things just, let's try this, right? Let's do a little experiment of what this is like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I teach a self-compassion break, because that's another piece that's like, okay, then what do we do with that? So touch is one piece. Touch helps us shift into kind of a different mode of being. And then also, how do we then deal with some of these issues that we're dealing with in a way that we can have compassion? And I think one of the things with compassion that's often misunderstood is that people believe they need to be compassionate to themselves, like when things are going well. But actually, compassion is much more about when things are not going well.
Yeah.
In fact, if we're kind to ourselves when things are not going well, we call that loving kindness. Like it's kindness, and that's great. It's the wish that all beings be well. But when we give it to ourselves because of suffering, we're having a panic attack, we're having a negative thought take over, we're suffering in some way, well, that actually transforms that into the wish that, beings be relieved of suffering. And all of a sudden that becomes compassion. And so those are the skills that I use. So I'll stop there for a moment and just, yeah.
What's coming up for me, and I had a front row seat with the mindful self-compassion group, the you were leading and I was a part of during the training, but or I should say, and that group in particular was one of the most powerful experiences in my training, because even reading about mindful self-compassion, I might have had your kind of reaction when it was with your wife too. It's like, I don't know if I'm doing this. What's it going to be? I like mindfulness, but loving kindness as a practice for me was always very challenging and continues to be as a formal practice. And that's the reason I find like I probably need to look and turn more towards it if, it's still something I struggle with. What's coming up for me is, if you would be willing, you mentioned like a self-compassion break, or, for the listener or for the viewer, would you be willing to kind of, maybe guide us through a really quick how you would kind of do this, maybe in a session clinically as some kind of a self-compassion break, if that sounds okay?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. I think just it's important to note what the different areas of a kind of self-compassion are, just to give a little context. So, because people say, what is self-compassion? Well, it's actually broken down into three things. I mean, Kristen Neff has written a lot about that, and Chris Germer, Neff more on the research side, and Germer kind of more clinically. What they've really found, what Kristen Neff found early on, is that self-compassion, is about self-kindness. It's also about common humanity and mindfulness. And so in order to understand one, you kind of have to see the opposite. So like self-kindness versus self-criticism. So how do we shift from self-criticism to self-kindness? Or common humanity versus isolation, feeling alone, right? Like how do we shift from alone to I am part of the human, I'm a human who suffers just like everyone else, who has pain just like everyone else. And then mindfulness, used in a way, it's not, the opposite would be over-identifying with thoughts and emotions. Again, everything we talk about in ACT, in mindfulness, it's about how do I not be these emotions, right? When I'm angry, can I say there's anger in the body versus I am this thing and it is so big,
Yeah.
right? So those are kind of the components, and we actually go through those in the self-compassion break. So let's just do it.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Before we do, I'm gonna lead through just a few like things you could try for compassionate touch, and then we'll kind of talk about it after.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay. So for compassion, it's kind of cool. You can be in any kind of posture you want. A lot of times we're like, all right, let's get into this mindfulness posture, half lotus or full lotus or whatever. But like the invitation is to be comfortable. I do find it comfortable to sit on a cushion, but it's just me and have a back straight. But for this, I invite you and whoever's listening to, close your eyes if you'd like. You don't have to. You can always shift your gaze to something neutral, not on words or images, but maybe the floor or desk or ceiling. We're just going to kind of feel a little bit of the body and what it's like to touch the body intentionally. So the first one would be taking one hand and placing it over the heart area. And just noticing what this is like. Some people say there's a bit of warmth that they might feel, or maybe the pressure feels pretty good, almost like a little hug. You can leave that hand there and place the other hand over the heart. And again, we're just experimenting here, seeing what this is like. And now keep one hand over the heart and take the other hand to the belly and just kind of feel breathing from the outside. And you can take both hands and place them over the shoulders, giving yourself a little hug. Maybe squeeze a little bit if that feels good to you. Now taking both hands, placing them under the chin and letting the hands support the head completely. And then gently lifting the head back up. And taking one hand and just kind of stroking the forearm or the other arm. Again, we're just seeing what this feels like, noticing. Maybe folding the hands together or kind of putting the hands together in some way, and then just kind of taking one thumb and maybe just kind of stroking the back of the other thumb. And so just kind of pause for a moment and just reflect on any of those areas that felt maybe supportive, kind in some way, maybe just kind of helps you shift into being here. You can play with this after. We're going to do a self-compassion break, and during it, I'll ask you to, or offer to place one hand over the heart or another area. So just kind of maybe choose now which part kind of connected with you. And so as we shift into the self-compassion break, I want you to think of something that maybe recently was mildly annoying, frustrating, like on a 0 to 10 scale, 0 being like total relaxation, 10 being like total distress. Try to pick something under maybe a 5. So something again, like being cut off in the car, being stopped at all the red lights, maybe a conversation that didn't go exactly as planned, or a work deadline that didn't get met. Just think of something and really kind of help make it vivid until you kind of feel it in your body. If there's something currently happening in the body, maybe pain or a strong emotion, sensations, then maybe use that. And the first step in the self-compassion break is to recognize that this is a moment of suffering. You might say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. If that doesn't connect with you, you might say, this really sucks. This is hard. This is a really difficult moment. Seeing if there's words you can use that would identify that this is a moment that maybe needs compassion. And so this first part is simply identifying that this is a moment of suffering. It's allowing ourselves to recognize what's happening. It's part of the acceptance piece. And now we're going to find a little bit of common humanity. So some of these phrases may fit for you, some may not. Maybe reminding yourself, this is what it's like to be human, to have pain. Or anybody in this situation would feel just as I do. Or perhaps millions of people face this exact same thing. I'm not alone. Really finding words here that help you to see that you're more connected to everyone else than you are separate. This emotion is part of being human. It's hard. And then the last phase of the self-compassion break, it's really generating self-kindness. So I invite you, if you've found a place of compassionate touch, such as over the heart or somewhere else, to allow yourself to place a hand over that area. If that's not fitting for you, that's okay too. Just let that go. You might say some of these phrases that may work, may feel like they fit, and they may not. You might say, may I have the strength to get through this? May I begin to accept myself just as I am? May I be free from internal and external harm? May I live with ease? If there are other phrases that seem to fit here, go ahead and say them to yourself. If there is a phrase that you're connecting with, then keep repeating that to yourself. And if not, then perhaps imagine that a friend of yours is experiencing exactly what you're experiencing in this moment, feeling exactly the same way. And imagine what you might say to this friend. How you might comfort them or help them through this difficult situation. What your body language would be saying. Would you be close to them? Are you touching them or at a respectful distance? What's the tone of your voice? Sometimes it's all in the tone of the voice. Now, seeing if you can offer to yourself the same words that you just offered to a friend in the same way, same tone. Inclining to yourself just as you would a dear friend or a child. And now letting go of the practice and maybe just sitting in the body for a few moments, just noticing what it's like to have done this. And when you're ready, if the eyes are closed, opening them, stretching the body if it's needing a stretch, ending the practice.
Thanks so much for that, Brandon. So it's customary. I would just like my experience during that is it's been a while, right? As to formally go through that. And so feeling that warmth that you mentioned, that definitely came up when kind of holding myself, right? That touch, the thing that came immediately to mind is so many of the people I'm currently working with feeling isolated, feeling cut off, lacking that touch in particular, right? We think about we just need, company, community, but actually having physical touch can be such a need that isn't getting met so often. And then, of course, during the self compassion, my mind usually goes to myself as a parent. And so having patience, being present, being there, it's just such a powerful reminder of what's important and being able to talk to ourselves like we would talk to other people. So incredibly useful and incredibly powerful. So yeah, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's my pleasure.
In terms of the theme of mindfulness, I am mindful of the time here and I don't want to keep you too late. If people feel about you similar to how I feel about you, just rock star as a person, clinician, and they want to know more about you, the work you do, where would you point people to find out more about you, your practice, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so definitely our website. I think you mentioned it before, slc-psych.com. Or just Google my name, it'll pop up. I always do kind of have ongoing groups that are 8 weeks and cover mindful self-compassion, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, mindfulness-based stress reduction. And we also do an interpersonal process group. So there's a few different options there. I will say self-compassion is best learned in groups. So is mindfulness, in my opinion, because of the common humanity, because of the connection that we see. Actually, our mind isn't that different than others. Um, and so I highly recommend groups when people are interested in learning more. There's also on our website, I have resources like meditations I've led and recorded and stuff like that. So that definitely would be where to start.
All right. Well, Brandon, I'll definitely link to those and we'll have all those in the notes. Just thank you so much for not only taking the time here today, but just for being the person you are. truly life-changing in my life. And it's just such an honor to reconnect again and see you again. So thanks again, and I really appreciate it. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun. I feel like we could talk for like, weeks on this topic. So, but
Yeah.
I'd love, I love what you're doing. And if you want to, I'm always want to come back. So yeah, thank you for having me.